Some stories from World War II are so intense, so deeply human, that they linger long after the last shot was fired. Private First Class Thomas Atkins' courage on the Villa Verde Trail is one of those moments. A lone soldier who refused to yield, even as an entire enemy force closed in on him with overwhelming fire and impossible odds. Thomas Atkins was born on February 5, 1921, in the small town of Campobello, South Carolina. 21 years later, in December of 1942, he left that quiet place behind and joined the United States Army. The world was at war, and young men from every corner of America were answering the call. By the spring of 1945, Private First Class Tom Atkins found himself thousands of miles from home, deep in the mountains of Luzon. The Villa Verde Trail, a narrow, treacherous route cutting through dense jungle and steep ridgelines, had become one of the most contested pieces of ground. Japanese troops entrenched in fortified positions, holding every part of the ground with relentless resolve. The Americans pushed forward, step by step, knowing that each hill taken brought them closer to ending the war. On the night of March 9th, Atkins and his unit from the 1st Platoon occupied a high hill that overlooked the trail. The position was strategic, but exposed. Most of the platoon established a defensive perimeter on the hilltop. Atkins and two companions took up a position on a ridge just outside that perimeter. It was a listening post, an early warning station. They dug their foxholes into the damp earth as darkness settled over the jungle. The air was thick and humid, filled with the sounds of insects. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound carried the possibility of danger. The men knew the Japanese preferred to attack at night. They knew the enemy was out there, watching, waiting, preparing. The hours stretched on in tense silence. Atkins and his companions stayed alert, their weapons ready, their eyes straining to pierce the darkness. Then, at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, the night erupted. 2 full companies of Japanese soldiers surged forward out of the darkness in a coordinated assault. The jungle lit up with muzzle flashes. Rifle fire cracked through the air. Machine gun rounds tore through the foliage, splintering branches and kicking up dirt. Grenades arced through the darkness, their explosions illuminating twisted faces and desperate movements. TNT charges detonated with bone-shaking force. The violence was immediate and overwhelming. In the first moments of the attack, both of Atkins' companions were killed. Atkins himself took a severe wound, deep, painful. The kind of injury that would send most men crawling back toward aid stations and medics. But Atkins did not fall back. He kept watching every movement in the dark and struck back as quickly as he could. Despite the searing pain radiating from his wound, despite the shock of losing both men beside him, he held his ground. He raised his rifle. His finger rested on the trigger. Then he started firing back. The Japanese continued their assault, wave after wave pressing forward through their own casualties. They threw everything they had at the American position. The ridge where Atkins fought became the focal point of their attack. If they could overrun it, they could roll up the entire platoon position from the flank. After the first assault was repelled, with bodies strewn across the approaches, Atkins faced a difficult choice. He could withdraw. He could make his way back to the American lines, get his wound treated, let someone else take over. The perimeter was only yards away. No one would have blamed him. But he stayed and kept his position against all odds. Atkins understood that his position was the hinge on which the entire defense turned. If he abandoned it, the Japanese would pour through the gap. His platoon would be surrounded, cut off, destroyed. He remained in his foxhole, reloading his rifle, scanning the darkness. The enemy set up a machine gun position barely 20 yards away from him, close enough that he could hear the voices of the gunners, close enough that the muzzle blast lit up his foxhole with each burst. They focused their fire on him, trying to suppress him. He would not be moved. He fired back and held his position by himself against a dozen Japanese troops. For 4 hours, as the night slowly gave way to early morning, the battle raged. The Japanese attacked again and again. Each time, they came with renewed fury, convinced they could overwhelm this single wounded American. Every time they came, Atkins answered with steady, careful shots. His rifle cracked repeatedly into the darkness. His shots hit their targets, and the attackers went down one by one. Each assault shattered against his position like waves crashing on a rock. He was exhausted, every part of him aching. Blood was soaking into his uniform from the wound. His arms ached from holding his rifle. His ears rang from the constant gunfire. Smoke and cordite burned his throat. But his hands stayed steady. His aim remained true. His determination never wavered. He cycled through weapons as they failed him. When his rifle jammed from the sustained firing, he grabbed one of the weapons from his fallen companions. When that one jammed, he took the third. He fired round after round, magazine after magazine. Drawing on every bit of ammunition the three-man position possessed. 400 rounds passed through those rifles. 400 rounds sent downrange at the enemy who kept coming, kept trying, kept falling on the slopes below his foxhole. By 7 o'clock in the morning, as the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the jungle canopy, 13 enemy bodies lay sprawled in front of Atkins' position. The attacks had stopped. An eerie quiet settled over the ridge, broken only by the moans of the wounded and the nervous sounds of men checking their perimeters. All 3 rifles were jammed beyond use. The ammunition was gone. Atkins was running on sheer willpower now, blood still marking his wound. His body pushed far past normal limits. During a lull in the fighting, he finally withdrew from his foxhole to get more ammunition and another rifle. As he made his way back toward the platoon lines, his fellow soldiers saw him clearly for the first time. They saw the evidence of strain, saw the exhaustion. They saw the toll of 4 hours of solitary combat. They insisted he stay for medical treatment. They tried to get him on a litter to carry him to an aid station. Even wounded and drained, Atkins kept his eyes on the dark, staying ready. As he waited for treatment, his eyes swept the perimeter. Movement caught his attention. A Japanese soldier had infiltrated inside the American lines. Without hesitation, Atkins seized a nearby rifle and shot him. Minutes later, as medics finally convinced him to lie on a litter, he spotted another threat. An enemy group was attempting to move up behind the platoon's position, trying to exploit the chaos of the battle. despite his severe wound, despite the fact that he should have been barely conscious. Atkins sat up on the litter, took aim with a rifle, and opened fire. Heavy, accurate fire that forced the Japanese group to withdraw and abandon their attack. Only then, with every threat neutralized, with his position secure, with his platoon safe, did Private First Class Thomas E. Atkins allow himself to receive full medical treatment. His actions that night had been extraordinary by any measure. Wounded in the opening moments of a major enemy assault, he had single-handedly held a critical position for 4 hours. For what felt like an eternity, he faced continuous attacks from a numerically superior enemy holding his ground. He had eliminated at least 13 enemy soldiers and repelled countless others. He had fired 400 rounds through 3 different rifles until each weapon failed. And even after withdrawing for treatment, he had continued to engage and eliminate threats to his unit. The official citation would later note that his superb bravery and fearless determination were major factors in enabling his comrades to maintain their lines. But the simple truth was even more profound. Tom Atkins had stood alone in the darkness and refused to break. When everything around him fell apart, when his companions died beside him, when his body was wounded and his ammunition ran low, he had held the line. For his actions on the Villa Verde Trail on March 10, 1945, Private First Class Thomas E. Atkins was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration for valor in combat. When the war ended, Atkins returned home to South Carolina. He settled back in Campobello, the same small town he had left as a young man. He lived a quiet life as a farmer, working the land, far removed from the mountains and jungles where he had once fought for his life. The years passed peacefully. On September 15, 1999, Thomas E. Atkins died at the age of 78 from congestive heart failure. He was laid to rest in Fellowship Baptist Church Cemetery in nearby Holly Springs. But, for those who studied military history, for those who understood what courage looked like in its purest form, Tom Atkins would always be remembered. Remembered for one long night on a ridge in the Philippines. One night, a wounded soldier refused to give up. And through his incredible courage, he saved the lives of his fellow soldiers. Thank you for watching and spending these moments with us. If you'd like to hear more remarkable World War II stories, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next episode.